Welcome back to another episode. We are culminating our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month and going to the best place in the world, the Bronx, New York, and speaking with April Hernandez Castillo. April is an actor, keynote speaker, author, entrepreneur, and lover of red lipstick. I love that piece. April, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning. Hello. I like that you mentioned the lover of red lipstick. I am. It is my signature.
Outstanding. Folks, we're going to be talking about leadership and parenting. I'm excited about this because not only are both of us parents, but it is a topic I've not covered on the podcast before, but should have been from the beginning. But before we get into all of that, April, tell us a little bit about you.
That's always an interesting question because there's so much that I do, but I will give you the 60-second really quick one. Born and raised in the Boogie Down Bronx. I'm a Bronxite at heart. I have been an actor for close to 20 years. I've done television, but I'm most known for my role as Ava in the hit movie Freedom Riders starring Hilary Swank. I've been speaking for the last 10 years, TEDx speaker as well. I authored my second book, Embracing Me, during the height of the pandemic, which was pretty wild. I am a creative, I'm an artist, I'm a risk taker, I'm a wife, and most importantly, I am a mother.
And great recap there because, I've been able to uh, dive into your background, all the works that you've been part of. I love the speaking engagement about mental awareness, health. I love that you are a champion for parenting. Congratulations to both you, your husband and yourself, for the great young lady that you've raised, award winning. I love seeing all the accolades for her part in the acting world. Imagine that. And we're talking about parenting, great topic to talk about, especially in the day and age that we find ourselves. There's just so much thrown at our children, but so much that parents don't get involved with that they should. Right, and so we'll get into the conversation by asking this question: how would you describe a parent?
Someone who needs help. Someone who drinks coffee and wine all the time. Um, a parent to me, we are gardeners. That's how I see parenting. I am a gardener. I plant seeds into the ground, which are my children. And I am there to make sure that the soil is the foundation. And I'll throw a lot of seeds of wisdom, of street smarts, of all of these things. And you hope and pray that your child consumes everything that you feel that they need to become a decent human being, someone who will impact the world in some way, and just become just a great person, even when they fail, because who doesn't? Even when they fall, because who hasn't? And you be there to protect them and to guide them. That's how I see parenting.
I love the analogy to gardening. I'm an avid gardener. I understand that full well. The time it takes to prepare a seed for planting, because not every seed can be planted in particular times of the year. And as parents, we do have to take that type of approach when we're dealing with our children, that we are the caretakers of that garden for their world until they, plant themselves in another garden, right? Because they will.
Right.
But great example to use for parents. Now, we all now we're both parents right now, but before we were parents, we had parents, right? And so I wanted to ask you a little bit around what was your experience with parents, because that's really where we learn most of parenting.
Right. I mean, my parents did the best that they could during a very tough time in New York City. I was born during the crack epidemic era. My mom, she came from Puerto Rico at a young age. And being Latino, being Puerto Rican wasn't the thing. You know, she said most of us didn't want to share that we were Puerto Rican at that time. It was different, right? It wasn't this whole Hispanic Heritage Month. There wasn't this pride. It was more of like, we don't really want to be seen, in the sense because of all of the racism that was occurring. You know, when my mom moved into the Bronx where I grew up, it was predominantly Jewish. So there was this whole, you don't really belong here. So know your space and know what you do. But at the same time, as the Jewish community, they left New York City, and the Bronx became predominantly Puerto Rican. Now I don't even know what the Puerto Ricans are. It was this thing of, they did the best that they could. My mom and my dad, they were together until my mom passed for over 40 years. You know, they had an interesting dynamic. And at that time, right, children were not seen, children were not heard. You do as I say, not as I do, that kind of thing. But my parents taught me, they really did do the foundation of me respecting myself, me using my voice, me um understanding that I can become anyone that I wanted to be as long as I worked hard. So there were fundamentals that they planted inside of me that I still operate through today.
And I love that the fundamental laying for your child, folks. If you're listening, we all have a level of relationship with our parents. Some are great, some are not so great. Some you have to admit are terrible, right? Because just the people that had chosen to become parents were just not ready for life themselves, and then unfortunately ingested a child into the whole works. But foundation is it's where we get to build the building from, and so good to hear that at least, and even in an era where they had challenges with identifying who they were because of the makeup of where they were, they still chose to give you some nuggets and words of wisdom around things that you have been able to capitalize. And you speak about these things during your talks. I have not read your book yet, but will, and excited for that, to dive in a little more into your background. But if folks, if you're listening, foundation, if you can provide foundation for your kids, something solid where they can actually build from, and they'll make their own choices, but at least do that, because it really matters, when we're growing up. And April, so where do we get it wrong when we become parents? Because we know it's not all great.
Right.
We don't have a book that guides us to what we should do. Sometimes we don't even have things that have been passed down. But where is it that you feel that we get it wrong as parents?
Hmm. I don't know if it's wrong, right? Because everybody has their own culture in their household. I just think we lose touch is a better way of putting it. I always, when I'm working with parents, when I'm facilitating, I tell them, don't you remember what you were like as a teenager? When did you lose touch with that person? Why do you all of a sudden become so afraid to have conversations that are so taboo or hard? And I explain to parents, if you don't have these conversations, the world will. And the world that we are living in today is wild. So if you are not in your child's space, if you are not constantly communicating, and I get it because parents are working extra harder. We are tired. We've just experienced a pandemic. Some of us are still experiencing severe burnout, right? Like we're just burnt out. And so we allow social media or the internet to raise our babies, Not even TV anymore, because kids aren't even in front of the TV. They're just on their phones and we don't know what's going on. So I think that's what it is. I think we lose touch and we're not cool, and we lose that coolness, and we lose like that, where your kid just doesn't want to be around you. But to me, I just go like, wow, I'm not saying that you should be your child's best friend. I'm not my child's best friend. I'm my child's mother. And there's a difference. I don't need to be her best friend. I need to guide her and get her through this life. And then when she becomes a woman, I'll become her best friend. Um, but I think that's what happens. We lose touch. We're so involved in everything else other than what's going on with our child. Um, and not every parent. I'm just saying from what I've heard, from my experience and what I've seen firsthand, it takes a lot to invest and be present with your child when you're constantly tired. So
Yeah,
losing touch.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great losing touch is a better word than wrong, right?
Right.
Because that's
Right.
subjective, right?
Right. Because, like, I don't know what's wrong. What may be wrong for you may not be wrong for me. But I think I've noticed just parents losing touch, especially when I hear the phrase of, oh, my kid is always on the phone. I don't know what to do. You take the phone away from them. I don't know what. When do we become afraid of taking away something from a child? Oh, because they're gonna have a moment where they break down. Well, congratulations, welcome to life. Get over it. Like, and we've also become very afraid to parent because of all the laws, because of, God forbid, if you discipline your child, someone wants to put you right away and expose you. But I'm there like, no, when do we give the freedom of someone who doesn't live in my household to tell me how to parent? That just drives me crazy. So all of these elements go into why parenting feels so much harder.
Yeah, and I agree. You mentioned, there's a fear earlier as you was talking. I had the thought of, there's a lot of parents that do not educate their kids or share this time, and are unaware and lose touch because they're trying to shield them from certain things that maybe they were exposed to. But at the same time, we do a disservice to our children to allow them to know that we did not have it all right. Right. We didn't have it all right, and these are things that I went through, and decisions I had to make to help me navigate through this. And maybe you can get that early, and maybe you can make a better decision than I did. You may make the same one. Who
Right.
knows? But at
Right.
least I, as a parent, I made you aware that this thing does exist. And you mentioned a chaotic world, kind of crazy. It is. It has always been. I believe it's just a different crazy, right? Saying
Right.
it's all crazy, but different crazy. And then you think about where your child is getting their education from. If it's not from you, it's gonna come from somewhere. And so,
Mm-hmm.
even if you have to break down and eat some humble pie, please share some of those things that made you realize that there was a better way. It may just help your child.
Right. And kids learn not by what you say, but by what they see. Uh, I mean, it's it's one, 2 plus 2 is 4, 1 plus 1 is 2. They will replicate how you handle failure, how you handle anxiety, how you handle a chaotic world. For example, my husband during the pandemic, there was so much fear. And especially in New York City, we were seeing things that we had never been exposed to. On top of having 9/11 happen, right? New York City has had its moments. And my husband, being the head of the household, made a very bold decision and said, we will still find joy in this mess. No matter what is happening, we are going to try to find the joy. And that really kept us afloat. And I thought that was profound, because we had to sit down with my daughters and say, this is the plan. This is how we are going to look at chaos. This is how we are going to look at the world changing so fast. And this mindset of saying, no matter what happens, we're still going to stay focused. We're going to still thank God, and we're still going to try to find the joy. We're not going to allow what's going on in the world to permeate and rattle everything that we have here, because then we're not, really leading them. And I thought that was profound for him to do that, because I was losing my mind. I'm not gonna lie. I was just like, oh my God, like my speaking career was on hold. Listen, when Hollywood shuts down, Hollywood doesn't shut down for anything. When Hollywood shut down, I just thought to myself, my goodness, this is terrifying. Okay, how do we still set the tone? So I tell parents all the time, you set the tone for your household. You're tone setters. So what tone are you setting every day in your household with your children, but most importantly with yourself?
I love that. And it actually brings us to my next question, which fits just great, which is, when do you go from a parent to a leader in your home?
Oh, it's the moment that you know that you're having a baby. It's the moment that you say, okay, wow, this is happening. What do I want to do different? Who would I like to become? Where are my shortcomings? And how do I work on that? And it's all the same thing as leadership. If you are a CEO, if you are in a startup company, at the end of the day, you have to set the tone for your company. How your employees are affected by your presence, your energy, will determine the outcome of how they work for you, of how they produce for their quota, or getting you the things that you need to make this company run. It is the same thing in a household. But for me, leadership begins the moment of conception, of thinking, okay, what's everything that I want to deposit into my children that I never had? Will it all stick? No. But what are the core beliefs and values that I want to instill, and begin not only instilling in them, but they have to see it in me. So I always tell parents, stop setting expectations if you're not fulfilling them yourself. I think we're going to rattle a couple of people on this podcast.
Hey,
I'm
I
just saying,
love it.
I think we just don't get some ratings, because I can't stand it. I go, okay, so you want your kid to climb a mountain, and yet you've never even stepped on grass. You've never even looked up a mountain, let alone you are allowing them to climb without any tools. That's literally setting them up for failure. So if you are setting expectations, which they should, I tell parents, don't be afraid to set expectations and standards, but also be fluid, because what we don't want is our kids to always feel like they have to live up to us. But if you are not living up to that same standard, then you might need to readjust.
Yeah, the best example they could ever get is the one you set. And if you don't set it, you can't expect it. You can't expect it, right? As a leader, we do the same thing, which is I love the conversation, where it's headed. I was going to ask you just this, and how can leadership development, because we were talking about a person that's about to be a parent or is a parent, not having the tools themselves to become that or execute that platform, and doing it any which way they could. But there is a correlation with development. Now, it's funny, we require folks that govern and manage adults at an organization to go through development programs, but we never require parents to go through some type of development program. So how can leadership development influence a parent's role?
Oh my goodness. Can you imagine if we actually had to take classes for parenting? It would drive people, they wouldn't become parents. So wait, you're going to tell me how to parent? Yeah. My gosh, can you imagine? Can you imagine if you actually had tools? This is not telling you how to parent. These are giving you options and things of how to handle your emotions, your trauma, everything you've never dealt with, not passing down what you are still dealing with. I tell parents all the time, I go, deal with your trauma so your children don't inherit it. Deal with your trauma so they don't inherit that, which is why I wrote my book Embracing Me, which is now on Amazon, just in case anyone wants to order it. I'm just plugging it in. I have come to a place, my husband and I, where I've dealt with a lot of my own personal demons, so that way it's a love letter to my daughters. It's for them to know me as a human being. Before I became your mother, I'm a woman who had dreams and goals. And also so that way they don't have to make the same mistakes. I hope that they don't, but if they do, there's a blueprint. This is how mommy did it. And I want to pass that on to you. And, I had a very difficult and complicated relationship with my mother, which still affects me today. She's been in heaven for 5 years, and I'm still working through certain things that affect my mindset, that affect my own professional decisions, because there was always doubt. My mom didn't really, she didn't give me, she always made me feel like I was never good enough. So I'm still working through that. And that's what I tell people. I'm like, just because you become an adult doesn't mean that that's it, all your problems disappear. And I'm not a perfect parent at all. But I definitely know I'm doing it differently.
Yeah, and that's all you could do, right? Take what you learned, try to apply it in a way where it's effective for your child, because even the child is different. Your daughter's different from you, so you can't apply the same thing. You have to see how that tool is applicable for her to help her, right? And we
Correct.
talk back to the gardening thing. You just can't go in with the shearers and just start going at it, right? You're going to lose your plants. But there are some things you need to snip out to allow growth to happen. And
Right.
so, it's wonderful. Now, yeah, every it's tough to tell a parent you got to go through this school when they've been doing this so long and never had to, right? But a wise person will seek counsel, at least seek some advice from mature and well-established parents, right? You don't want to get them from everybody, but
Right.
well-established parents that can actually help you make some decisions that are in the best interest of your home, because ultimately your decisions will affect your home, just as your husband decided this is how we're going to treat this thing. And it was not only inspirational to you and your household, but now to the listener, right? Because he he actually became the leader in a chaotic situation, and that's really where it matters the most. Now, you gave some tips, some advice as to how you should at least approach parenting. And so, what other advice would you give to a struggling parent, right? Because we all have those moments. It
Right.
happens.
Right.
Or someone that's about to become one, because it's very scary.
Listen, it's absolutely terrifying. I think social media has romanticized parenting, especially for women. It's bad enough we're constantly comparing ourselves in a social media world, but when you compare yourself to a highlight reel, to filtered photos, you question, wow, why am I not living that life? Or why am I not where they are? Or you have no idea what happens behind closed doors. And man, it's so hard to give parents advice. um, but what I will say is, if you didn't grow up in a good home, or in the home that you think it wasn't right, you have the power and opportunity to do it right. And if you don't have access, you have YouTube. You have so many videos where you can look up to people and say, oh, let me find a mentor, right? We always talking about mentorship. We're always telling young people find a mentor. But if you're growing up in an urban community, underserved, community, you don't have access, but we do all have access to a phone. Even I look at certain people, I'm like, how do you have that phone? I don't understand. Um, where information is at our fingertips. You know where I'm going with that. I'm gonna keep it clean. We have access to information at our fingertips. So I always tell my daughter, if I don't know it, Google does. If mommy doesn't know, Google does. And saying, what kind of parent do I want to be? If I don't know how to do this, then reading books on parenting. You may not find exactly what you're looking for, but you'll learn so many new ways, especially in how to communicate. I think that's the biggest thing, really learning how to communicate with your children. Children want to be spoken to, not at. It's the same as a keynote speaker. I always tell my friends who are speaking, I'm like, just talk to the crowd, don't talk at them. And children need that. They just want somebody to just sit and talk. Also, don't be afraid to let your kids know who you are, not what you do, but who you are. Before you came into my life, this is mommy, this is daddy, or if you're a guardian. And these are some of the things that I like. These are my dreams, these are my goals. I never knew my mother's dreams. Never. I never knew my mom's dreams. She never spoke about her dreams, her goals, her desires, ever. So I'm constantly sharing my dreams with my daughter, both of them, even at 5 years old. So that way they feel like, oh wow, mommy's sharing a part of her heart with me, and it makes them feel special.
Those conversations are just invaluable.
Valuable.
And we came from the same, the same area. I grew up in the Bronx,
Right.
161st and Girard.
Ooh,
And
that's fire. That's fire. That's a
but
fire.
the home is kind of like a sanctuary, right? Regardless of what's going outside, the home is a sanctuary. But I share the same thing. No one ever spoke of destinies or goals or achievement or anything like that. Matter of fact, the only time I remember that we celebrated something my mom did was get her GED, right? And she blew it out the water. It was a big thing. But that was it. That was it. Never
That's
heard of
it.
anything before. Haven't heard anything back. And now my mom has passed as well. And so, it's one of those things that as parents and for those listening, it's so important to have these conversations with kids. Believe me, they will understand a whole lot more. And you may have to put it in perspective at their level, but
Of course.
they're smart. They're smart. So
Look, they are smarter than us. We may think we are smart because we're older and we just have wisdom and experience, but they see the world completely differently than we do. And I always tell my husband, I'm like, my girls are so smart. Like they are so much smarter than I am, in the sense of how they see things, how they express themselves. And I love to listen to them, and I love to hear what they have to say. And it's just, once again, just because you are the parent doesn't mean you know everything, because we don't. We only know what we know. And if you're willing to open up and engage with your children, and really let them lead, right? So a leader, if you're doing the right job, if you're doing it the right way, your mentee should pass you. If you're at a CEO and you've been mentoring someone, they should get to the level, and we should not be afraid of that. My daughter right now is kicking butt. She's working more than her mother. Right? I mean, literally, she's 10 and she's like, she has a job, she's doing this. And I am in a place where my star power is to decrease while she increases. and I'm okay with that. The mentee is passing the mentor very fast, and I'm okay with that. And I understand when I'm playing the role of a coach, when I'm mentoring her, and when I'm mommy. I play those three different, I understand them, because as a parent, you should be your child's first mentor. You should be your child's first coach. Why not? Why not? Why not? Why not embrace those roles? Um, I think it's an amazing, amazing training.
And the ability to know the difference between those roles is it's an advancement to a parent in itself. So if you're a parent out there, you trying to figure out, which one to play at which time, just know that they need all three. They need
Absolutely.
the mommy, the dad to run to when they're scared. They need that mentor to show them ways around things and to be able to scale over those obstacles that come their way. They need a coach that won't make a decision for them, but will
Mm,
help them make the right decision, right,
correct.
based on how they want to address the issue. And so, those three positions as parents are so critical. Not many take advantage of all three, but I would exhort all those listening to explore those. If you've never ever dove into one of those, it's rewarding not only for them, but and I would dare say even more for us, because we get to see the fruit, right?
Oh, absolutely. When you know what hat to wear on top of everything else, and I'm talking, and I'm also aware that single parents, it is so much harder because you're dealing with different dynamics. You're doing things on your own. You are the head, you are the visionary, you are the leader. If you don't have anyone who's helping you, half the time you're just trying to survive, right? You're trying to just breathe above the water. So I am very aware, and I want to be empathetic and sympathetic when I speak about this. But at the end of the day, you still set the tone. You still set the tone. And the most important thing are the words that we speak. I mean, the words that we speak and how we say them really can make or break your child, but also break you. So I'm always very aware of how I speak to my children. Not saying that if I need to do what I need to do as a mom, I turn it up, right? I'm not saying that, but words are key. And the same thing as leadership. How you communicate with your staff, how you communicate what is it that you want to execute, it is the same dynamic in a household.
Yeah, I've also often thought your example is the seed, your words are the water, or whatever liquid you want to use to douse on that plant, right? And so back to the whole garden scene, those waters that whatever you say can propel your child, can break your child. But I love that you mentioned can break you, because guess what? Regret will come once you stepped outside of the boundaries of a great parent or a good parent. They will come and haunt you if you chose to go down the route that maybe wasn't as productive for your child. April, I tell you, I've enjoyed this conversation. I love the wisdom around, the common day to day that you're sharing with us. But you mentioned a book. Tell us a little bit about that book. Tell us how someone listening can get a hold of you. That's the most effective way.
Absolutely. My book is called Embracing Me, and it is my memoir. It's about perseverance, it's about pushing forward, moving forward, and really my whole brand of being transparent. I was in an abusive relationship as a teenager, which almost took my life. And once I was able to leave that relationship, I really took control. and used it as ammunition. And I've been blessed to have an amazing career. And now as a speaker, just traveling the United States, internationally, constantly sharing that never giving up, always moving forward. And the best way for people to connect, I would have to say, right, I don't want to say my website because it's still in the works, but social media is the best way. LinkedIn, it is April Hernandez Castillo. And on Instagram, it's April L. Hernandez. And I think that's always the best way for people to contact me.
Well, great, folks. We're going to have that as part of the show notes and the video, so you can get a hold of April, and I'll make sure to put in the book details so that they can also get to that. April, thank you so much for sharing this topic of leadership and parenting with me. Both Bronx Bombers here. I don't
Hey.
get that too much, but really enjoyed the conversation. I wish you all the best, folks. Be sure to get into those links and that information to get a hold of April. Today's episode is sponsored by Triad Leadership Solutions. If you enjoyed the episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to subscribe and let us know by leaving a comment right now. And we're always looking for new ideas and guests that we can add to the show. So if you know someone that has a topic that you would like to be featured on the podcast, or you want to sponsor our shows, we love to hear about it by emailing us at triadleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.